Hello, Prestige heads, and welcome to another American Prestige Q&A on video. You get to look at me and Danny. And once
You're
again,
welcome.
isn't that exciting? You're welcome. As always, I don't want to go through the whole spiel, but folks who are paid subscribers to American Prestige can join our Discord and ask questions in the Q&A forum. And we pick one of those questions pretty much once a week, although uh, we take a week off from time to time, but usually once a week. We pick a question to answer here on the YouTube and make social media clips. And you should follow us
On the
at all of these
YouTube,
places. Follow us on the YouTube, follow us on the Instagram,
on
follow
the
us on the
Twitter.
TikTok, all the things you kids are into. We're, as far as I know, on them. I do not know that directly personally myself, but I do know we're here on YouTube and we're going to answer your questions. And by the way, also, you can still purchase Welcome to the Crusades. I want to put a little plug in for that. It's still for sale. If you go to welcometothecrusades.com, you'll find it there. Great series with the folks at We're Not So Different. Really enjoyed doing that and hope that people are finding it enjoyable to listen to, and that more people will purchase it so we can do a second season. Um, so with that, I guess, Danny, we don't have any. You don't have anything else to plug, right? We don't have anything else to plug, do we?
No, just
Uh,
subscribe to our podcast or Derek and I will be so
well,
sad.
obviously, I mean, you can't get to the Discord to ask questions if you're not a subscriber. So, and we can't move forward as a society really if you're not an American Prestige subscriber. So definitely do that. Let's get into the question. This week it's asked by Ryan Black. We have heard Daniel mention a few times his thoughts on DSA. I believe how compared to left organizations historically, it doesn't ask much of its members. And other times, if my memory is correct, he has talked about how he sees his work as being about leaving messages in a bottle in a Frankfurt School-esque fashion. With all that in mind, I'd be curious to hear you both talk more about your thoughts on what it would be valuable slash prudent for American socialists to be doing in this present moment, like at a quotidian organizing level, and also what our medium and long term strategies should be. Danny, I'm going to let you take the bulk of this one because I am not an organizer and this
Well,
is
neither
not
am
my
I,
area.
and that's how I was going to begin this. I'm not an organizer. I'm not involved with DSA. I do not speak on behalf of DSA in any way, shape, or form. Some of my best friends are in DSA, but I just want to say, or rather, are really heavily involved in DSA, and I respect what they do, and I respect anyone who gives their free time to try to build socialism. And there's that's almost kind of an unalloyed good that someone is spending their time doing that. So I just want to um, say that out front. And I think what the asker of the question is referring to is that it wasn't meant to be as a knock on DSA at all. It's just meant to be in sort of the place of the present socialist left, and what role that they socialist organizations are able to play in a world where effectively the U.S. government in the middle of the 20th century destroyed the organized American left, and it's been kind of recovering ever since. And it's almost just the bad luck that DSA and its recovery in the mid 2010s and the rise of Bernie and everything happened to come at a time when the mass politics as a form of politics hasn't really been effective. And the government isn't really responsive to that type of organizing in the same way that it has been historically. And as I think we've talked about on the show before, I think that first began in foreign policy. Uh, Though obviously one could argue the degree to which the American government was ever responsive, but it's certainly in the middle of the 20th century, foreign policy was cordoned off, and I think that has slowly colonized other areas. That sort of structure of state functioning, anti-democracy, has colonized other areas. So it's not a knock against DSA or the people who give their time to it, but rather a reflection of what I take to be the structural realities of modern American politics. So I guess we would start there. I think the first thing to do is to identify what are the structural realities of modern American politics. How would one go about making change? Is it through the type of organizing that worked in the industrial era or the era of mass politics, or is it a different type of political strategy? So I think I've said this before, but I really don't even think we're in the developing a strategy moment. I think oftentimes that people have developed a strategy almost putting the cart before the horse. We're really at a moment of diagnosis because I think that a lot of the models for left wing politics and left wing organizing emerge from an era that is no longer extant. That the era of industrial organization, the era of mass politics, the era of people going to a workplace, and the sociality upon which the type of classic left wing organizing rests no longer really exists in a significant way, let alone this type of industrial economy has been replaced by a service economy and a financialized economy that is just very different than the one. That existed earlier in history, to say nothing of the complications of the original proletariat capitalist formation of the various middle classes that exist between proletariat and capitalist and bourgeoisie, the various ways that the quote unquote working class has itself transformed since Marx first used that term in the middle of the 19th century, is something that obviously many socialists have examined over time, but should be the founding basis of any political strategy. So I think we don't even have answers to those basic questions about social structure, and political organization, which makes it difficult to offer a coherent argument in favor of a short-term, medium-term, or long-term strategy. So that is what I would say where we are at. The problem, and it's again not DSA's fault, but the problem with any political organization or any association, as existed early in American history, is that we just don't live in an era where those have meaningful political impact. Which is why oftentimes their most meaningful political impact is affected through a given politician that, like AOC or Zoran Mamdani, that happens to associate or have been associated with them in the past, which suggests something about the nature of politics, that is significantly an elite-driven affair, um, to a degree that mass organization has less of an impact than it has in the past. And political science seems to demonstrate this, even though that's not the word of God. Things change. So that's my initial take on that. But Derek, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with this. I think, there's a lot of room to just be critical of the society that we live in now, as you say, to try and diagnose the problem without necessarily having to offer a solution. Obviously, you want to point things in a direction. You want to, suggest that a better world is possible in a way that is different from the way that the MAGA movement does it. You want to offer people alternatives, but you have to be realistic about the possibilities for achieving anything like that in the current structure. There are, there's one. We've got one major party that has completely lost its collective mind, and we have another major political party whose job is not really to oppose that party, but to oppose any movement from the left, to challenge the dominant narrative. And so, like rocking a concession machine or soda machine over and toppling it. I don't think you can do this in one fell swoop, which is why I look at things like, not to criticize, to get away from the DSA thing, but other left organizations that run presidential candidates every 4 years. Not to criticize that, but I think it's a moonshot that it has no chance of working and wouldn't succeed on its own terms, even if by some miracle you got a leftist elected president, because the structure doesn't exist to allow somebody like that to actually succeed. It's going to take a long time. We unfortunately, I don't know that we have a long time, but it's going to take a long time to shift the direction of politics in this country, and you can start that very simply by identifying what is wrong with the system that we have now and what is wrong with the dominant alternative that seems to be taking over, which is this far right nationalist sentiment, masculine, whatever, anti woke, whatever you want to call it. I think there's a lot of room to just be critics of those things, and start there and get people to see that this is not, things are not It doesn't need to be this way, I guess, is what I'm saying. Other than that, I would say, obviously vote blue no matter who. um, and donate to your local Democratic Party candidate, whatever they're running for. No, I this question gets me at a time when I'm like ultra frustrated with all of this stuff. Like the Mamdani situation in New York has um, just driven me, up a wall basically, because it
People
makes it so
criticizing him, you mean,
clear.
not him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, not him. I mean, people, not just people criticizing him, but people in the Democratic Party. And I know we harp on the Democrats and they're not in power, and that's that's fine. I we I can understand if people think that we spend too much time talking about them as the opposition party. But when you this guy wins a primary, the Democratic primary for mayor of New York, and you can't uh, find five senior elected Democratic officials in the country who will endorse him for fucking mayor of New York. He won the primary. But what you get instead are a lot of people who say there's no place for somebody like this in the Democratic Party. And my response to that these days is like, yeah, you're right, there really isn't. And I don't know what the alternative is, because we don't live in a
Abundance.
country. Yeah, Jesus. I mean, we don't live in a country that allows a lot of space for organizing outside of the strictures of the two-party system, which makes all of this very difficult. But I really don't see a future for the left inside the Democratic Party, which compounds this all. Because at least you could say, if the DSA, it could, if there was a possibility that the DSA could increase its power, its reach within the Democratic Party, there's an existing structure there that you can build on and very quickly ramp up. But I think you've got to start from like ground zero, because there's just no home for this stuff within the Democratic Party as it exists. As I think, we talk about the gerontocracy and these people eventually dying off. I don't think that's going to change anything. The next generation of leaders are already baked in, and they've already got the same attitude. So I think it's bleak if you're looking for immediate term, like short term. How do we, develop a real left movement in this country that can grab the reins of power and change course? I don't think that possibility exists. But I do think that the things that you've talked about, Danny, in terms of diagnosing the problem, in terms of just uh, saying, being honest about the situation that we're in and the crisis, the problems that we face, is an important step that has to happen before you can even begin to talk about taking action. And I think we're in that phase of things.
Yeah, and of course, you could always subscribe to American Prestige. That is
Well,
truly
obviously,
the
yeah.
first step on the path toward revolution. Well, Derek, I
And
think
tell
let's
other people about American Prestige. I mean, I'm serious about this. Like, tell other people about this show. Not that I think we're going to save anything, but it's this kind of stuff that what we try to do on this show is to state the problems as they are, and not sugarcoat them, and not try to be partisan about it, and not try to be Democratic Party cheerleaders, or any of that kind of thing. And I think if more people could get that message, not necessarily through us, but if more people could get that message, it would be a good thing. So, if you are subscribed to American Prestige, then get more people to subscribe to American Prestige, or at least listen. Not necessarily subscribe, but at least listen.
Well, Derek, I think let's leave it there. Everyone, thank you as always for listening. Actually, I'm going to ask you all to review us on Apple. We've gotten a lot more reviews, but let's break that 1,000 barrier. And as I always end this, we love you all very much. Bye.
I